Senator Vin Gopal, thank you so much for being with us here on ITV Gold. I know you're joining us from New Jersey. Hope you're doing well there.
Thank you. You too.
Yes, having you on the show today, there's so much that we need to discuss in terms of what's happening in the nation, the outrage, the protests, the riots, and the demonstrations. Just beginning the show, I have to ask you, as a South Asian, and as somebody who's, such a pioneer member of the community, how are we supposed to address the situation to our members? And also to our kids and the youth? How should we be talking to them about what's happening currently as we're speaking?
Well, look, I think it's important. As South Asians, we've all had, almost every South Asian, I think, has had some kind of prejudice or discrimination. I remember after September 11th, a lot of South Asians were targeted, gas station owners, 7-Eleven owners, convenience stores, things like that, because they had brown skin and resembled those that did a terrible thing on 9/11. So similarly, I can't imagine what it would be like being a black parent, a black father, a black mother, having to worry about your child going out, and there's an automatic fear there. And I think you see that across we all see our parents and our grandparents, and they're different, all good people and all want the best for everybody, but you see certain biases that are ingrained, no matter who they're at, and it's about breaking those. So I think that these protests are good in the sense that they're hopefully going to push some policy changes. We have to do more police community relationship building. We have to do more of a civilian oversight. A lot of that needs to happen, but overwhelmingly 95% of the protests yesterday, 98% were overly peaceful. Unfortunately, there's one or two situations where people are looting small businesses and things that are, completely ridiculous. I was just on the phone right before I got on with an independent pharmacy in New York who was looted, and they took everything from him, and that's sad because that's completely unnecessary. He just lost his livelihood. So, but I think it's a conversation that's important to have.
Yes, definitely. In terms of discussing systemic racism and police brutality, this is something that's come up in the last 7 days. We're looking at the 7th day of protest today. New York City, where we're coming from, has had some riots happen here. How do you address this issue that has, left the communities distraught and so sad and upset? And, how do we react and act accordingly right now?
I think we have to react with voting is the most important thing. I think to vote in elected officials whose policies are going to reflect some of these changes. Yesterday in my district in the city of Asbury Park, we had about 2,000 people. People are out there. Obviously, there's a lot of people who don't want to go right now but support it because of COVID-19 and they might be older or have some underlying health conditions or things like that. So, we've been telling them, stay home, but put up a post on social media, be supportive. But I think these are important conversations to have. There was a wonderful moment down in the city of Camden, which has one of the highest crime rates across the country in the United States, where the police chief and the police department marched with the protesters, stood with the protesters. That's what we need to see more of. We need to see more of that police community relationship building.
How important is right now for these demonstrations to be peaceful? As a senator, I know you might be concerned about it. Luckily, in New Jersey, most of the demonstrations have been peaceful, but New York is about to go into a curfew, which starts at 8 p.m. today. How, are you addressing protesters? And what do you have to say to these people that are looting and that are rioting?
Yeah, I saw a statement from the ACLU. I don't know how effective these curfews are. Sometimes the curfews may make things worse. I get the balance is that you don't want people out at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. looting or doing anything. But at the same time, to tell a protester, hey, you have to stop at 8 o'clock, that goes against, they have emotions, they have feelings, they need to be able to speak, and they need to be able to stand there. So I don't necessarily think I agree with these curfews, but at the same time, they got to be peaceful. I was on the phone with a police officer who went to the emergency room last night in Asbury Park and got a huge rock thrown at him. I mean, he's 22 years old and a brand new officer. So I think there has to be peaceful. We can't be destroying businesses. It's not getting anyone's attention. It's only going to turn people away. What we need to do is we need to vote. We need to make sure our voices are heard. We need to make sure petitions are filled, and we need to get rid of elected officials that are doing ourselves a great deal of disservice. I mean, I watch what the U.S. president is doing, and it's absolutely awful. The message he sends is goes against everything as far as what a democratic society should be doing. And there's a big election in November, and I hope voters are going to vote him out. But this is the opportunity for everybody to kind of speak out, and certainly violence is not the answer.
There are so many families that are grieving the death of George Floyd, because this reminds them of the grievings that they have had to go through. We're talking about hundreds of African American families that have faced systemic racism, police brutality. My question to you would be, as a senator, what can you really do in terms of making an institutionalizing change? How do you really change the institution that is currently permitting this racist, display out and out?
One thing, we can't let cover-ups happen. We have to make sure that good police officers are rewarded for speaking out. And those that, we have tens of thousands of police officers that do an honorable, great job, but they all have to collectively speak out when they see something wrong happening. And just watching that video of George Floyd was heartbreaking and brought tears to my eyes, just to see someone cry out in pain and good people standing around that generally didn't do the right thing when they watched their fellow officer, and they all should be charged and all should go to jail. But that's not what good people do. So we need all police officers to speak out. We need more police relationship building with the residents. I want to see police officers out there with residents, not behind desks, in schools, and actually building relationships and having that back and forth. Used to be at a time when a lot of our members in the community would know each other. That's not the case anymore.
Right. According to you, what is going to happen in the next few days? The protests are continuing to happen. Curfews are being placed in so many parts of the country. What are we looking at here? The South Asian community is very worried and scared in both New Jersey and New York here. So I would like for you to address that.
Okay, we have to just continue to promote for peaceful protests. In Asbury Park, in my district yesterday, talking to the city, roughly 70 to 80% of the people that were marching there were not from the city. They had never seen them before. So I think we have to be careful about folks that are coming from the outside. I had seen some reports of some right-wing groups that were coming to kind of cause and stir trouble. We have to be cautious of all of these things, and as South Asians, especially for those that own retail and small businesses, just to make sure you're in touch with your local police department, make sure that you have everything locked up, and we have to get through these days. At the same time, being cautious and careful and not tell people not to protest. That's not the message. People should protest. So hopefully socially distant and 6 feet and wearing masks, because we still have a pandemic at the same time. But they need to do these things all at the same time as being as peaceful as possible, listening to the line of Dr. Martin Luther King and other great African American leaders who preached and made incredible differences in their community.
I'd like to take this moment now and go into discussing about COVID-19, which is obviously impacting us as we're speaking in the middle of these protests and these riots. Are you scared that the amount of gatherings that are taking place in all parts of the nation is going to create an increase in number of cases? And is there a worry that the flattening of the curve could be disrupted by that?
Yes, to all of that. I am concerned, and that's why I think it's extremely important that people stay 6 feet apart, that both sides wear gloves, masks. That's 97, 98% of the challenge, and that needs to be enforced. I think that there's still a health pandemic. We've lost over 100,000 people in America, over 11,000 in New Jersey. We still have a lot of cases. We did not do the 95% social distancing that everybody did. That death toll would have been 10 times higher. And obviously the international toll that it's taking in every country, including in India and other places. So Yeah, I'm very concerned about it, and I hope if people are protesting that they're social distancing and staying 6 feet apart.
What do you have to say about the economic as well as the healthcare ramifications of this pandemic? I'd like to start discussing a little bit on the economic ramifications. There are so many South Asian Americans and other minority communities that are being disproportionately affected by this pandemic, both economically and in healthcare. What do you have to say about that? And what are some of the resources that are available through your office in your district that they should reach out to?
So I think the government has a moral responsibility. We've shut down, government has, federal and state has shut down a lot of businesses, a lot of mom and pop small businesses, um, at no fault of their own, obviously not by choice of anyone. No one is having fun doing this, but it needs to be done through grants and maybe tax credits. We need to identify those industries that are going to have the hardest time coming back, specifically restaurants, hotels, anywhere where there's crowds, disc jockeys, wedding photographers, things of industries that have completely been tarnished are going to have a lot of trouble coming back in the near future. So we're looking in the state of New Jersey. We're releasing a $50 million grant from federal funds from the CARES Act that we're going to be releasing next week. We have a webinar for businesses in our district with the head of the New Jersey State Economic Development Authority on Friday morning, where we're going to be going through the grant. It's up to $10,000 per business. So we're trying to be as creative and try to put together a number of different programs to try to help small businesses. And we have to do everything we can to get them going again. My district specifically thrives on tourism because we're right on the Atlantic Ocean. So our industry is going to be decimated this summer, unfortunately.
With reopening happening at, in just a few weeks, on June 15th, we're looking at New Jersey reopening. Do you really think this will help the economic stress on the state? If so, what do you have to say then about the healthcare impact it may have on the number of COVID-19 cases or the number of deaths?
So I think we have to reopen, but it just has to be done responsibly. It has to happen with both parties wearing masks. Has to happen with making sure everyone's washing their hands frequently, social distancing 6 feet. I talk to our hospitals in the county pretty regularly. The hospitalization rate is dramatically down. There's all health indications and studies say we're likely to get a second wave, maybe in September or October. I think it's important now to start opening that faucet a little bit and to start trying to get the economy going again. And that way we know where the hospitalization rates are. We know how much this is going to affect assisted health facilities versus this industry and that industry. At the same time, we have to continue to increase testing. Testing is still not where we need it to be. We need to get to a place where everybody is tested on a daily or weekly basis until we get a vaccine.
What is the future of healthcare looking like, according to you right now, for the rest of the year?
Not great. We're all going to be tackling with this. We have to be careful. We have to be responsible, and we owe it to the doctors and nurses and healthcare workers to try to keep those hospital rates as careful as possible. We have to be. Everyone just has to be responsible because we can be carriers and give it to those unknowingly. So I think until we get a vaccine that is reliable and trustworthy, we're going to be in this little bit of a bubble.
Is New Jersey ready for an increased number of cases or the second wave? And I ask this in terms of PPE supply and as well as also just having enough hospital capacity and ventilators.
We are right now, knock on wood. Hopefully that doesn't change. It's a disgrace that is the United States, which is supposed to be the most powerful country, is begging China and other places for hand sanitizer and gloves and masks. Absolutely insane that we went through that process, and a lot of people died as a result of that. But I think we're in a better place today. I've been pushing in New Jersey that we need to manufacture, even if it costs more, manufacture sanitizer and masks and gloves and gowns and all these things. And we need to do that in the United States. And it needs to be a national effort. And even if it costs a little bit more money, because now it's not just going to be hospitals and healthcare facilities, everybody's going to have it. Restaurants are going to need to have gloves and masks, and supermarkets, and every industry is going to have it. So we need to start creating more of it here. I'm hopeful. I'm obviously not overly confident, but I'm very hopeful that we've made the governor has taken a lot of steps in recent months to prepare us for a second wave.
Senator, another big topic of discussion that's really concerning communities of color, especially, is food insecurity and the massive amount of food insecurity we've seen throughout the nation, especially in areas such as like New York and New Jersey, who are so hard hit by COVID-19 and its impact. What has your experience been with it, and what is needed in the community right now? Also, what are the resources we can look at in terms of combating this?
Yeah, one of the heartbreaking things was when we closed schools, the number of kids that were on free and reduced lunch, where they were getting their only really good meal during lunchtime. So we've increased funding and support for our food banks throughout the state. We're trying to make sure. We recently did a program with our food banks where we put signs out with a phone number if you know a family that needs to find food. It's our biggest thing is access, and make sure we connect with those families, because there's a lot of generous people out there, and obviously the government has stepped up in financial resources, but it's identifying those families that have food insecurities. We have a number of folks that reach out to our office in our 18 towns that reach out pretty regularly, and we try to connect them with the right charity.
Wow, and that's definitely something that's so important. I hope a lot of the viewers are able to get that information and utilize these resources. Another concern of the community members, a lot of the parents that are watching our TV Gold right now, is the huge transformation and the massive push on education and the entire system of it. What are we looking at in terms of the summer and the fall? And what do you have to say about the future of education in terms of how it's supposed to be taught, how much should be remote, and how do we really make sure all the kids stay safe in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantee yet right now that New Jersey is going to go back to school in September. It might be remote. Our teachers did an extraordinary job on 2 to 3 days notice, getting virtual classrooms set up. I know this summer the Department of Education is working with all the school districts to make sure the remote learning is there. We need to be prepared for September, October, or even if they go back to school and they need to go back home for a little while because an outbreak happens, they need to be prepared in virtual learning. And I know our teachers are doing an incredible job getting ready for that. A lot more preparation this time around.
Senator, a lot of this has required communication and perhaps understanding and collaborative spirit between the local, state, and federal government. What do you have to say about the leadership that has shown a lot of resilience and strength in New Jersey? And also, what do you have to say about the communication between local offices and the state offices in New Jersey?
Overall, good. I think Governor Murphy's done a very good job flattening the curve. I'd like to see him do a little better job of giving clarity to some of these small businesses that have been panicked and are trying to reopen, but flattening the curve, he did a great job. And I think there's been good communication. We do regular calls with all of our mayors, with our county officials, our health officials. Last night when the protest was happening in Asbury, I was on the phone with the sheriff and the prosecutor, and was messaging back and forth with the governor and state police just to make sure everything was going well. Everybody is coordinating, and I think everyone is trying to do the best they can.
We are coming towards the close of this interview, but I just have a few questions left here. Number one would be, what is your area of focus for the next few weeks? What are some of the biggest concerns that you have as a state senator?
So one of the big areas that I'm gonna be really trying to dig in deep as a result of COVID-19 is mental health. I'm very concerned about the mental health challenges that are going to come as a result of this, not just for healthcare workers and children and everybody, but a lot of people who had their life normal and maybe their entire economic security is gone. Maybe they've lost a family member. Their life has dramatically changed. And removing the stigma of mental health and making sure that we break barriers and make sure access is there for folks is an important priority. So we're working on a number of pieces of legislation right now in the New Jersey Senate to address that. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges. And second is making sure that we fight to have manufacturing and resources here, so we have PPE and other resources for all of our health responders and businesses. And third, no particular order, is making sure we support the small businesses. So one of the great strategies that New Jersey did, and one of my biggest criticisms of what they did, is they left open all the Walmarts and Targets and all these big corporations while they shut down these little guys, and the little guys were selling a lot of the same stuff the big guys done. So I think they should have acted quicker as far as doing curbside retail, outside retail, potentially even indoor retail, by limiting the number of customers that come in, or doing mandatory temperature checks or providing testing support. And I know that that's limited, but I think we should have done a better job. I think New Jersey failed dramatically, not only in our assisted livings, but also in making sure that small businesses had an even playing field.
In terms of just looking at the healthcare workers right now, I'd love for you to give a message out to all that are on the front line, as well as the essential workers who are working tirelessly every day to just make sure the country is running.
They are incredible people, and I know there's so many are South Asian. I've talked to so many South Asian doctors, nurses, EMTs, paramedics, essential workers owning convenience stores and gas stations. They're on the front lines, and they've done an incredible job, and I'm glad they are here. New Jersey has a big nursing shortage. We've seen it right here, and hopefully, like this is after 9/11, where a generation was inspired to go into the military and law enforcement and government service. Hopefully, this inspires a lot of young people graduating to go into healthcare.
Definitely. Senator, thank you so much for your time here on ITV Gold. I'd love for you to give one last message to our audience here on ITV Gold.
Want to thank ITV Gold, for always providing great news and information, and to your viewers. I hope everyone is safe and healthy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And